Hello, and thank you for joining me again on Run Level 0. Well, I apologize for my recent absence. Over the last week I was having some difficulties with my recording software, and for some reason my sound kept getting out of sync. So I think I may have had that worked out. We're going to find out at any rate. So in my absence, there's been quite a few of releases. So we're going to jump right in and take a look at Linux Mint. On November 30th, 2013, Linux Mint released 16 called Petra. So what is Linux Mint? Well, for the last couple of years, Linux Mint, probably about the last 18 months or so, Linux Mint has been topping the distro list charts as the most popular Linux distribution. And it's number one for good reason. Linux Mint, let's get over there. Alright, Linux Mint is a Linux distribution. It says their purpose, and this is their documentation, says the purpose of Linux Mint is to produce a modern, elegant, and comfortable operating system which is both powerful and easy to use. It started in 2006. Linux Mint is now the fourth most widely used home operating system behind Microsoft Windows, Apple Mac OS, and Canonical's Ubuntu. Alright, it says some of the reasons for the success of Mint are it works out of the box. Mint is based on Ubuntu, and there is a Debian-based version, but being based on Ubuntu, you know you're going to get a system that has a lot of support. It's going to be well documented, means that the community, both for Canonical and Linux Mint, will be able to help you in the forums and their web documentation through any troubles you may encounter. And Ubuntu is actually one of the more user-friendly releases in the back end. I mean, as far as installing and removing software, updating your system, that sort of thing, it tends to be a little bit more user-friendly. As you progress in your knowledge of Linux and your ability to use the terminal more, you will appreciate that, and it provides a good stepping stone into more advanced versions of Linux. So what Linux Mint has done is they've taken that base of Ubuntu and they've pre-installed it with all of your codecs, your drivers, Flash. All that stuff is already pre-installed, ready to go. So whereas with Ubuntu, you have to do a little bit of configuring on a clean system in order to get it really operational and ready for daily use, Linux Mint has done all that for you. Linux Mint has two official versions. There is the Cinnamon desktop and the Mate or Mate desktop. With this release of Linux Mint 16, the majority of the changes have been applied to the Cinnamon desktop, and we'll go through that, and that's where we're going to focus our review today, is with the Cinnamon version of Linux Mint 16. So there are a few changes, and I'm on webupdate.org. There are some changes that are applied both to the Cinnamon version and the Mate version, so we're going to take a look at that now. MDM, the default Linux Mint display, has received drastic speed improvements, and it's also received really good facelift, as you're going to see in just a moment. It really looks clean, looks sharp now. With Linux Mint 16, a new USB stick formatter tool has been added by default, so it's going to help you in formatting your thumb drives if you're not very comfortable using the command line to do it, or even gparted. And Mint X, the default Linux Mint GTK or 3 theme, has been improved. And let's see, other changes. Faster boot and startup. The software manager features a refined interface, significant speed improvements, and uses less memory. Safer kernel updates. We're going to talk about that here in just a moment. Better EFI support. Steam has been added to the repositories, and there's more. Now, about this safer kernel update, we need to have a talk about that for just a moment. What they mean by safer kernel updates is basically they have opted out of kernel updates. There's been quite a bit of buzz about that lately, and I hope that they resolve this soon. It's really a disappointment. What does it mean for the average user that they've opted out of the kernel updates? Well, they're doing it for reasons of stability. They want a more stable operating system. And by opting out of the kernel updates, they do achieve that. However, it's at the cost of security. By opting out of these kernel updates, they've really opened up their system to a ever-growing number of vulnerabilities, whether it be viruses, Trojans, just malicious users, that sort of thing. To the average user, will that matter? If you're just the average user who's at home, the casual user just surfing the web, checking your mail, most likely it won't greatly affect you. It still gives me pause. If you're doing any kind of banking or shopping online, I wouldn't use it personally. If you are using it in a professional environment, or even for a small business, I definitely would skip it. Just for me, it's just not worth it. So enough about that. Let's take a look at the Cinnamon desktop of Linux Mint 16. I do have it running in a virtual box, and as is the case with all of my virtuals, I've given it 2 dedicated processors and 2 gigs of RAM. So right off the bat, you can see that MDM, your login screen, has received a major facelift. It looks really nice now. In the past, MDM has been rather bland and quite frankly disappointing, and that's no longer the case. I like this new theme that they've applied. In the upper right hand corner, there is a power manager where you can just shut down, suspend, restart right from here. Of course, in the center you have the Linux Mint logo with the date and time, and on the far left is your login, where you're going to log in at. You can choose your users, you can choose your session if you have more than one desktop, or if you want to try Cinnamon with software rendering instead of your graphics card. So for now, we're going to leave it with the default, and let's log in. The most significant improvement to this version of Linux Mint is with the Cinnamon desktop environment. Cinnamon has been upgraded to Cinnamon 2.0, and what makes this huge is Cinnamon has now broken away from the GNOME shell base, and they're now their own entity. It is much faster, much lighter on your system. We're going to take a look at that here in just a minute when we go through the application, see exactly how much this is pulling. But you get the same great look and feel that Cinnamon has become known for. Cinnamon is a traditional desktop layout. You have your single desktop with icon shortcuts to your computer and to your home folder. The default file browser is Nemo, and you get a nice theme and nice icon scheme. Just looks good. It's easy on the eyes. If you're using the computer for an extended period of time, this is going to be really easy on your eyes, and you're not going to get that much eye fatigue off of this. You get one panel across the bottom. In the lower right hand corner of the panel, there is a all Windows applet that will show you. Let me pull that Nemo back open again. You click on it, it'll show you a list of all the windows you have open and what workspace they're on. So that's pretty handy if you have a lot of things going on at once. Next to that, there is a system clock and calendar. Your update manager. You see I have a couple of updates waiting. Battery monitor if applicable. Volume settings, and there is a change here that you need to be aware of. If you go into sound settings, you have a new tab called sound effects. With Cinnamon 2.0, you now have the ability to set sound effects for system events such as starting Cinnamon, switching a workplace, various events, and you can even customize those sounds if you would like, or turn them off altogether. Personally, I find them a little annoying, so I don't even use them. Next up is our network monitor. Session Manager. Here's a brightness applet that I added. It's not on there by default, but it is available, as well as our notification area. On the left-hand side, there are shortcuts to your File Manager, Terminal, Web Browser, which is Firefox, and a Show Desktop icon. Next up, we have the Cinnamon menu. Cinnamon has probably one of the best default menus available in Linux. It is a modern menu. It is searchable. The applications are categorized, and it supports having favorites. Adding a favorite is easy. We simply select the application we want to add and right-click it. Then you have the option to add it to the panel, to the desktop, or add or remove from your favorites. Just that easy. You'll find that Linux Mint in general, both the Cinnamon and Mate editions, both come with a well-rounded, well-thought-out selection of default applications. Under accessories, and we're not going to go through them all, just hit some highlights. You have, of course, the Archive Manager, Disk Manager, your File Manager, a Screenshot Utility, Terminal, Text Editor. Tomboy Notes is installed. You don't see that too often. A USB image writer that allows you to write an ISO file to a USB stick, and the USB stick formatter that was mentioned earlier. For graphics, of course, you get the GIMP, as well as a selection of image viewers. Under Internet, you have a desktop sharing client, the Firefox web browser, Pigeon for internet messaging, Thunderbird email client, Transmission for your BitTorrents, and XChat IRC. For Office, you get the entire LibreOffice suite, very standard. Sound and video, Banshee is your music player, Brasro for handling optical media, and you have two video players. There's Totem and VLC. For preferences and administration, you have the usual set of system administration and preference utilities. Of note, you do have the ability to theme the MDM login window. You have the Software Manager, which is the excellent Mint Software Manager, as well as the Synaptic Package Manager for the more advanced user. Let's take a look at our system monitor and see where we're running. Look at that. Right now it's only demanding 272 megabytes of RAM. That is probably about half what the old Cinnamon would be using. Cinnamon under GNOME Shell was quite heavy on system resources, but now this is a real contender for a desktop environment. Still don't know that I would recommend it for older systems. Jury's still out on that. We have to see how well it performs, but 272 meg, that's pretty slim. It'll probably go up if you're using it on hardware, so you can probably expect 300, 350, but that's still pretty good. Cinnamon also has kept its Expo view. If you touch the upper left-hand corner, you can see I've added a desktop here. I'll shut that down. But you can control your virtual desktops from here. You can change the focus. You can rename them. You can control open applications and even drag and drop them between desktops or close them all together if you so choose. You can also add as many desktops as you want or remove them simply by clicking the X. So that's nice. Mint also has, or Cinnamon rather, also has the ability to add desklets and applets. I'm going to pull open both of those. Desklets add small applications to your desktop. There are a few installed by default, although they're not a whole lot. Just highlight the one you want, click Add to Desktop, and then you can drag it and drop it wherever you'd like it, configure it, right-click it to configure or remove it. There are also more available from online repositories. You simply click the checkbox next to the one you want to install and click Install or Update Selected. Let's leave that open for a moment. Right-clicking the panel, you have the option to add applets to the panel. And there are considerably more applets available than desklets. And these applets can be fairly handy. You may want to peruse them and see if there's some that you want to add. Cinnamon 2, rather, having a hard time this night. Cinnamon 2 does have an improved snapping function as well. And by window snapping, that's where you drag the window to a side or corner and it snaps it to a half of the screen. With Cinnamon 2, you now have the ability to also snap to a quarter screen. And if you choose, by holding the control key while you drag and snap, windows snapped in such a fashion will always remain on top. You can never cover them up with other full screen applets, or other full screen windows rather. So that's a pretty neat feature if you like a nice orderly desktop. So all told, Linux Mint 16 with the Cinnamon desktop, I have mixed feelings on it. I love Cinnamon 2.0. It is an awesome desktop environment. I look forward to playing with it, but I'm still really disappointed about what's come to light as far as Linux Mint's handling of kernel updates. For me, that is a showstopper for now. Hopefully they can work that out in the future. There has been some buzz, some rumor that they may switch over, abandoning their Ubuntu base and going to a Debian base. Maybe that'll allow them to work out the kernel issues. I hope so. At any rate, yeah, you can download it and give it a try, but I do recommend caution. Like I said, if you do any online banking, any online shopping, professional applications on your desktop, I would shy away from Linux Mint at this time. That's just my personal opinion. But yeah, I wouldn't let it stop me from trying it. Just on a casual, everyday user basis, it should be fine. Well, thank you for joining me. Please leave your questions, comments below. If there's another desktop you want me to review, please leave that in the comments. I'll be happy to take a look. I have a few others that I'm working on now. Thank you for joining me. I hope to be with you soon for another video.